بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وبارك على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we have reached our next chapter from Kitab al-Nikah. Last week we were discussing the ahkam in relation to the breastfeeding and the conditions they're within. And today we're going to discuss our next chapter, which is the chapter Bab Nikah al-Kufar. So the chapter pertaining to the marriage to the non-Muslims, the Kufar. And so the author, rahimahullah, mentions لا يحل للمسلمة نكاح الكافر بحال ولا لمسلم نكاح الكافرة إلا حرة كتابية. And so the author begins by mentioning that it's not permissible for the Muslim, the Muslim woman, to marry the kafir man, the non-Muslim man. And this is based upon the ayah where Allah Ta'ala, He mentions وَلَا تَنْكِحُوا الْمُشْرِكِينَ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنُوا. نعم وَلَا تُنْكِحُوا الْمُشْرِكِينَ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنُوا. And so the Muslim or the mushrikeen should not be married until they believe, until they embrace Islam. And thereafter as well, the general understanding is for the same for the Muslim man in relation to the non-Muslim woman. But it's again upon the ayah, وَلَنْ تَنْكِحُوا الْمُشْرِكَاتِ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنُوا. And do not marry the polytheist mushrikat women until they believe. Again, referring to until they embrace Islam. Until they believe, until they embrace Islam. And so this essentially is the asl of the affair, that the Muslim man cannot marry a non-Muslim woman, and a non-Muslim woman cannot marry, or the Muslim woman cannot marry the non-Muslim man. And there are exceptions we mentioned in relation to the Muslim man, what he's permitted to do. We'll go into that, mention that further. Thereafter, we understand as well that if now a man was to marry a woman, they're both non-Muslim. The man was to marry a woman and they're both non-Muslim. And then the woman embraces Islam without the man. So the woman embraces Islam, but the man does not. Then this is a means of nullifying that contract. It's a means of nullifying the contract. It's a means of nullifying the contract. Thereafter, we're going to mention that the Muslim man cannot marry the non-Muslim woman except for if she is a free woman, as well as a kitabiyah. Now, as well as she's from Ahlul Kitab. So this is the exception in that rule. So the general rule is that it's not permissible. However, it's permissible for the man to marry the woman from Ahlul Kitab. So if now the Muslim احتاج المسلم إلى نكاح الكافرة. So the Muslim is in need, and so he marries the non-Muslim woman. فله أن يتزوج حرة كتابية. Then he's permitted to marry يعني the كتابية. So the woman from أهل الكتاب. لأن الله أباح لنا نكاح الكتابيات من اليهود والنصارى. This is due to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has permitted for us to marry, or the nikah, the marriage of the kitabiyat, yani women from Ahlul Kitab, from amongst the Yahud and the Nasara, and the Jews and the Christians. This is based upon the ayah where Allah Ta'ala mentions وَطَعَامُ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ حِلٌّ لَكُمْ, and the food of those who've been given a book is permissible for you, and they're dhabaih, so their slaughter is permissible for you. وَطَعَامُكُمْ حِلٌّ لَهُمْ, and that your food, or your dhabaih, the slaughter of the Muslim, is permissible for you. والمحصنات المؤمنات نعم المحصنات من المؤمنات والمحصنات من الذين أوتوا الكتاب من قبلكم, and those that are the chaste women from the believers, and the chaste women from those that have been given the book before you. And so this ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah clarifies the reality that the woman, of course, is halal for the woman to marry from the chaste women that are the believers. But likewise, والمحصنات نعم والمحصنات من الذين أوتوا الكتاب من قبلكم, and the believing women, or the chaste women rather, from those that have been given the book before you, yani Ahlul Kitab, the Yahud and Nasara. So each of these things are permissible. So it's permissible for the Muslim, the Muslim man to marry the woman from the woman of Ahlul Kitab. However, it's not permissible for the Muslim woman to marry anyone from the people of the book. This is due to the aforementioned ayah, the general understanding from the aforementioned ayah, where Allah Ta'ala mentions, وَلَا تَنْكِحُ الْمُشْرِكَاتِ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنُ, and do not marry from the mushrikat, disbelieving polytheist women, or polytheist men rather, until they believe. And so, with that, barakallahu feekum, we understand that with this hukum, Ahlul Ilm, they mention that there are shurut, there are conditions. There are conditions in relation to marrying the woman from Ahlul Kitab. From these conditions is that she is genuinely from Ahlul Kitab. So she's generally a woman that is yani Jew or Christian. So she's genuinely a Jew or a Christian. And so with that, of course, it's not now something that we understand it to be a matter where someone merely states something and they say that they are yani upon Islam, for example, or they're upon yani Judaism, or they're upon Christianity. But they just say that due to the fact that, for example, they have some sort of relationship to their religion, but they don't actually practice that religion. So they cannot be said now that this is someone that is permissible for them to marry. This is something that you hear on many occasions, people that have come across this particular hukum, and in turn have come across, men have come across women that they wish to marry. However, in reality, they are not truly adhering to their particular deen. They're not truly adhering to that deen. And it's questionable whether they would even identify themselves or ascribe to Judaism or Christianity, specifically in this country, for example, where the people would maybe not ascribe to Christianity in reality. And so it's not you cannot now suffice with saying that they're going to marry the person just because they are here in this land. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. That's the first condition. Our second condition is that the woman that is being married from Ahlul Kitab, she is chaste. Now she is chaste. Yani, what was understood from that is that she is not a zaniya. The dalil for this is the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, وَالْمُحْسَنَاتُ مِنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُم. And the chaste women from amongst those that have been given the book before you. And so Allah Ta'ala stipulated the chastity of the woman in order for her to be taken as a spouse, yani in terms of the people of the book. So this is the second condition. Third condition, as mentioned by some of the scholars as well, is that she does not display opposition or hatred towards Islam. So she does not display hatred or opposition towards Islam by direct opposition. Because of course, you may find someone that may be Christian and they adhere to the ahkam of Christianity, but then they openly oppose Islam. They openly oppose the Muslims. And this is not mustaba'ad, of course. This is not something which is far-fetched. Because if someone now adheres to Christianity as they see, as they believe it has been established or revealed, then with that comes an opposition towards all other adyan, all other religions, including Islam. And they'll make that apparent. So it's something which is very possible to occur. Next condition is that the man himself does not sincerely believe that his religion will be affected. This marriage to the non-Muslim woman will have a negative impact upon his religion. Essentially, he's able to assert his religion within that marriage, and that Islam within that household is the dominant religion, and that Islam within that household is the primary religion, and that there's no degree of Islam, the Islam of the man being established as the secondary religion within the home, or Islam being established as the equal religion within the home. No, rather the man has to be of the understanding that within entering into this marriage, that the home is going to be one where Islam is primary and the dominant religion. A final condition as well is that the Muslim man marrying a woman from Ahlul Kitab, he's able to establish the tarbiyah of any children that result from that marriage upon the deen of Islam. And so it's not a case of where you find in some of these scenarios where they will state that we will just raise the children to practice both Islam and Christianity, and then they'll choose when they're older. As we mentioned earlier in the previous point, it is not something now where you make Islam the equal religion within the home. It has to be the primary religion within the home. And this is something which will become manifest when it comes to the raising of those children. It's something which manifests when it comes to raising the children as well. And على كل حال, some of the companions, they regarded this practice of marrying from the kitabiyat to be makruh. To be makruh. And it should not be done except in the hal durura. It should not be done except when there is a necessity to do so. A necessity. What would a necessity be, for example? You're in a land where there are little to no Muslim women, and a man has the need to marry. Now, this is an example. From the companions that had this opinion was Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, where he mentioned and he advised Hudhayfa ibn Yaman radiallahu anhu when he married a woman from the Yahud. He advised him permission and he mentioned Fariqha, you need to leave her, divorce her. As mentioned in the Musannaf of Abdul. Naam, they advised her to leave her. And so they understood the peril or the dangers of such a marriage. And so due to that reason, some of the companions, as we mentioned from them, Khattab, took this particular position. Now, thereafter, Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah goes on to mention, when أسلم أحدهما غير زوج كتابية أو ارتد أحد الزوجين المسلمين قبل الدخول انفسخ النكاح في الحال. And so, as we mentioned earlier, if now the woman was to embrace Islam, and so the two zawjain, they're both kuffar, and the woman embraces Islam, then this now nullifies that marriage contract. Why? Because the Muslim woman cannot be under the non-Muslim man. So this nullifies the contract. Likewise, if now one of the spouses was to apostate, leave Islam, then this would nullify the contract as well. If this occurred before the consummation, then this would nullify the contract. And this is due to the fact that now they have ikhtilaf al-deen. Now they differ in terms of their deen. And so when it becomes clear that the person has left Islam, then this initiates the nullification of the nullifying of their contract. And so if now thereafter, Ibn Qudamah goes on to mention now, again, bringing back the masail regarding the slaves. He mentions in أسلم الحر وتحته إماء فأسلمنا معه وكان في حال اجتماعهم على الإسلام بما لا يحل له نكاح الإماء انفسخ نكاحهن. نعم، وإن كان ممن يحل له نكاحهن أمسك منهن ما تؤفه وفارق سائره. And so with this is the scenario that is laid out here by Ibn Qudamah. He mentions that if now the free man embraces Islam and he has slave women and they embrace Islam with him, and so they embrace Islam together, essentially what is upon him is to leave those women. Why? Because as we mentioned previously, the free man does not marry the slave. So even if he had gathered them together and he'd married them, essentially, then this marriage should be nullified at that point if they remain slaves. Now, because we said that generally speaking, what was a ruling in the marriage to a slave is not allowed unless It's a slave marrying a slave. But what's the scenario when a free person can marry a slave? He's not able to afford the mahar. No. So if he's not able to afford the mahar, then he can marry the slave. Or, as we mentioned as well, he makes the mahar what? The freedom. No. He makes the mahar the freedom itself. And so these are the conditions mentioned. That from the conditions is that first and foremost, the man cannot afford the mahar. So from the conditions is that man cannot afford the mahar. The second is that the mamluka, the one that is owned, is a mu'mina, she's a believer. And this is with this as well, we understand that the rulings regarding the kitabiyya does not enter into this. So the woman from Ahl Kitab cannot, if she's a slave, then she cannot be married by the mu'min. The third is that the third condition being that the man fears that he will fall into zina. So he cannot afford the mahar, and he fears he'll fall into zina. So he's permitted to marry that woman. And the fourth is that he marries her with the permission of her master. So he marries her with the permission of that master. These are the conditions. Now, and so this is why this is going back to what we mentioned earlier or in previous lessons. So now, if he has these slaves, then he has his own ahkam. He's not Muslim. But as soon as he embraces Islam now, then this will nullify that marriage if he has these slaves that he's married. So and he's permitted to, or he has the ability to marry other than them. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. Thereafter, Ibn Qudama goes on to mention the chapter regarding the shurut fi nikah, bab shurut fi nikah, the conditions found in nikah. And this is similar to al-buyu', buying and selling, in terms of the fact that with buying and selling, when it comes to this trade, you have shurut al-bay' and then you have a shurut fil bay'. So you have conditions for the transaction, and you have the condition within transaction. Does that make sense? We discussed it when we were discussing the beginning. So, for example, a condition for the transaction is that every single part, each of the parties know what is being traded. It has to be ma'loom. No, it has to be ma'loom. It has to be known what is being traded. This is a condition. So it's a condition in order for that trade to be valid. Likewise, another example of a condition for the trade to be valid would be that both parties are pleased, or they are doing the trade of their own choice, their own volition. So they're not doing it now. They're not making that trade, and the trade is one of them is being forced to do so. For example, this nullifies that. So as for the shurut of nikah, then you have shurut nikah wa shurut fi nikah. Now, afwan as well, going back to the biyu', example of the biyu' or a shart fil bay' is a condition that is placed within the transaction. So the transaction is already fine, but now one or both of the parties want to add a condition within there. And that's fine as long as it's halal. So, for example, they make a condition. They say, "I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy this car from you," for example, and they make a condition that you have to give me the car within this amount of time. So they put the condition within there. Does that make sense, Barakallahu? So it's already a valid transaction. Then they add more conditions within there, and this is permitted. This is permitted for them to do. As long as it's not mukhalif lid-deen. As long as it's not mukhalif lid-deen, and it's permitted for them to do that. And so, as for the nikah, then the same thing applies. We have a shurut nikah or shurut nikah, as well as a shurut fil nikah. So shurut nikah, the conditions of the marriage are what? For example, what needs to be present in terms of the marriage to be valid? 2 witnesses, the mahar, so the wali, the mahar, 2 witnesses. So he said 2 witnesses, the wali, the mahar. They're Muslims. No. Jade. خلاص. Who's here on Saturday? No. The mahar is naam. It's not a condition. Naam, the mahar is not a condition. So we said it's a pillar. Sunnah. Obligation. No. So you have shurut, the pillars, then we have the wajibat, and we have the sunan. Now, in terms of the aqd nikah, the marriage contract, just as we have in the salah, conditions, pillars, wajibat, sunan. Naam. So we'll go over it again for those that weren't here Saturday. So one of the brothers, he thought that we was doing Umdatul Fiqh on Saturday because the light coincided with the chapter in Shahr Sunnah, where Baba Hari, rahimahullah, mentions the need for the wali. But we mentioned it, so we'll go over it again. So the shurut, again, are what? We have 2 witnesses, the wali. That's it. 2 witnesses, wali. The same deen, the Muslims. Nah. Wali. Need the groom. نعم. طيب, the arkan, the pillars, the mahar. He whispered to you the wajib. He whispered to you to tell you it's the wajib. Ijab and qubul. Now, so the offering and the acceptance, these are our pillars. Now, you can't have the marriage except that one the wali offers, and then the groom accepts. So the wajib, the mahar is the wajib. Now, so what we mean by way of that is that if now the mahar, for example, the man doesn't give the mahar, then he is athim, he's sinful. But it doesn't nullify the validity of the marriage itself. The marriage is still valid. Now, and then the sunan for the aqd al-nikah, khutbah al-haja, now, and the dua now at the end for the people that marry. So with that now, those are shurut and arkan. Now what we're discussing is the matter of a shurut fin nikah. So these are conditions that are placed within the nikah. Now the conditions that are placed within the nikah. And it's permissible for one or both of the parties to place conditions for the aqd nikah. So one or both to place those conditions. And so Ibn Qudama goes on to mention إذا اشترطت المرأة دارها أو بلدها أو أن يتزوج عليها أو 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 أن لا يتيسر ويتسرى، نعم، فلها شرطها. نعم، أو لا يتسرى فلها يتشرطها. And so with that it mentions the woman, she's able to make the condition, for example, that she makes the condition that she wishes to stay within her home. This is a condition that she puts in the marriage contract, or to stay within her country, now within her land, that she doesn't wish to move from one land to another. Then she's permitted to do so. Likewise, if she was to make the condition that the man does not marry another wife, doesn't take another wife, she makes this a condition, then again, she is permitted to make this a condition. If now, the question being now, if, for example, he makes that condition, or she makes that condition that so she doesn't, or he doesn't marry a second wife, take a second wife, and then he takes a second wife, what occurs in this scenario, please, Barakallah? The question clear? It's clear to everyone straight away. Because like everyone already had the question in their heads. He wrote the contract. What happens though? Now, what happens? So he has to just get rid of her. He has to get rid of the second wife. Okay, that's one. That could be an answer. He's sinful. So the marriage remains intact though, but he's sinful. You're saying okay? The first wife's allowed to divorce. What do you mean by she's allowed to divorce? She's able to ask for a khula. But she's able to ask for a khula anyway. For the courts to accept. Okay. She can forego that condition. Don't think she will. She can. You could, because the basis on the narration where it mentions that any conditions that are not found in the book of Allah, then it's null and void. And it is a point that is mentioned by some but from what's apparent, it is valid, because it's a condition that's placed there in the nikah, and it's accepted. It's accepted. Now he agrees to it. Essentially, what happens is the brothers are pretty close anyway. What will occur is that nothing will occur to the marriage, but the woman has the right of nullifying the marriage. Now, she has the right to nullify the marriage. Why? Because a specific condition within that contract has been nullified. Now, so what that means is that it's not now a khula, and as we know it traditionally, but it's what is regarded as the fasakh al-aqd, so the nullification of the contract. The difference between the two is that with the khula, what is the primary difference between the talaq and the khula? The man pronounces it, and the khula, as a woman seeks it. What else? The idda, that's something. No, something else. The mahr. Naam, the mahr is sadaq. The mahr is returned in the case of the khula. In the case of the fasakh, the mahr is not returned. Naam, because the contract has been nullified. Now the contract's been nullified, and so due to that, she is permitted to nullify that contract. She's permitted to nullify that contract. واضح بارك الله فيكم. And so with that, that is those are the conditions that she can place, for example. Along with that, then along with that, then Ibn Qudamah wants to mention some of the forms of nikah or conditions within contract which are impermissible, where you have now a particular type of nikah where it's impermissible. From that is the mut'ah. And Ibn Qudamah mentions in the narration, وَنَهَى رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم عن نكاح المتعة وهو يتزوجها إلى أجل معلوم. إلى أجل معلوم. So he mentions that the mut'ah is impermissible, And this is, or the nikah mut'ah, and this is that the man was to marry the woman to a specific time, to a specified time. And so this marriage is يعني محرمة, يعني النكاح which is محرم, haram. By extension of this, if a man was to marry a woman and he marries her whilst knowing, with his intent is that he's going to divorce her at a particular point. She doesn't know. She doesn't know. But he has that intent. Then he is athim. He's blameworthy. He's sinful for that. Because there's no marriage that a person can enter into whilst they have any real intent of ending that marriage. Now, if he has, or he enters into a marriage whilst knowing that he wishes to divorce, and she knows this as well, then what is the hukum upon who? Both? Why? They both know. And so then that is, it's mut'ah. Because they both know. And essentially, not necessarily that they both sit down and agree, but they both have that knowledge and they both enter into that contract with that knowledge. And by entering into that contract with that knowledge, it's agreement anyway. Now, so the mut'ah is a form of marriage, which is haram. So it's mu'akkad. And temporary. And this was permissible in the beginning, at the beginning of the time of the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam and his da'wah. However, thereafter it became something that was abrogated and became something which was haram. And this is the practice of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, kama araftum. As for the Shia, the Rafida, then they do not cease to make this something which is permissible. As this is just one of the many mukhalafat, one of the many oppositions to the deen that they have amongst them. One of many things they oppose deen in. Now, likewise, and then Qudam mentions, it went sharat. نعم طلاقها في وقت بعينه. And then if he makes a condition, we're still talking about condition. He makes a condition that he would divorce her at a specific time, then this is not correct. نعم, it's not valid. Likewise, the Nabi عليه الصلاة والسلام نهى عن الشغار. والشغار هو أن يزوج الرجل ابنته، أن يزوج ابنته ولا صداق بينهما. And so this practice of shigar is where one man says to another man that I will marry my daughter to Fulan, I'm from your family, and you will marry your daughter to Fulan from my family. And there's no exchange of mahar. Rather, this is the condition. I will marry Fulan to you as long as you marry Fulan to them. Naam. And this is basically the condition of this contract. And the condition of the contract will only go through with this contract as long as Fulan can marry Fulan. And then with that as well, that there's no mahar. So along with that as well, this is batil. This particular form of marriage is batil. And it's batil and established by way of ijma'. There's consensus in that regard. There's consensus in that regard. Thereafter, it also mentions, as is found in the Sunan of Abi Dawud and Ibn Majah, it mentions that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam لعن على محلل والمحلل له. نعم, محلل ومحلل له. You know what محلل is? No. So, and the muhallal lahu, the first husband now. So the la'an, the curse being upon the woman, or the man, sorry, that engages in marriage contracts or marries a woman, but he does not marry her with the intent of being married to her. He marries her with the intent, now he marries her with the intent of making her permissible for her previous husband. Now, because we mentioned, when it comes to the talaq, if the husband divorces the wife 3 times, then it's not permissible for him to take her back until she marries another man, and consummates that marriage. So then this man comes with this intention. He comes with the intention of marrying the woman so that her previous husband can remarry her. This here, barakallahu feekum, obviously necessitates a degree of agreement between one and the other. So one spouse agrees with the other spouse. And so, or the new spouse agrees with the previous spouse, should I say. And so it comes to that agreement. And so he states that, marry this woman, and then after some time you can divorce her, and then I'll marry her back again. And so with this now, as mentioned, the ruling upon this is the la'an, the curse. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned the curse being upon these individuals. And as we understand that being the case, then of course we understand it to be from the kaba'ir al-dhunub. We understand it to be from the major sins that a person does so. And so with that, of course, there's a degree of la'ab fi deen. The person is seeking to play games with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that regard. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. I'm going to conclude with that point there, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Wa jazakumullahu khaira. Wa sallallahu wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So it's invalid because of the conditions placed within it. So these are, when we're referring to these conditions placed within the nikah that are haram, then it also invalidates the whole contract. For example, if you use the example of buying and selling, if a person was to say now that I want to buy this water off you, for example, I'll buy this water off you, but the condition is you have to purchase it off me in the pub, for example. That added condition now has nullified everything. Makes sense? So now, when it comes to the nikah, hence why the mut'a is mentioned, that if now the person mentions a specific time, then of course that nullifies the whole contract. Nullifies the whole contract. Now, likewise, the shigar as well. Wallah. Now,
if a slave owner accepts Islam and slaves who are married to him also accept Islam, does he have to divorce them, or can he free them and remain married?
you can free them and remain married, but it's not necessary that they are his slaves. Does that understand? So if they're his slaves, then there's something else. No, Allah.
In the example that just mentioned, you said that they're not married in the case of Shabbat. So last week when you were mentioning about the man who marries a mother,
Yes. No.
But if he was married to the mother initially, wouldn't that mean that once was about to marry the daughter, that the marriage is not, it just becomes void because it wasn't correct in the first place. So it doesn't knock off the initial marriage of the mother.
We were talking. You're referring to when the two marriages essentially cancel each other out. No. So what's the question, that from?
So if I remember correctly, you said if he hasn't consummated the marriage with the older woman,
Yes.
then the program said that as a contract for the younger,
Mm-hmm.
then they both become not married.
Yes.
But if you're saying that,
If he consummates.
no, I'm not asking about the consummation yet.
Okay.
I'm just asking about the actual act with the younger.
Yeah.
Because it's not valid in the first place. So how is it cancelling out the mother's contract?
Because now this is the case of if he has the contract with, because it's only the contract that nullifies it, right? But with the older one, it's the consummation that nullifies it. With the daughter, if he made the contract, even if the contract wasn't valid, because he's made the contract, it's entered into that particular ruling. So just the fact that he's made the contract, then it's cancelled out the other one. So, but the action of him making the contract, yeah, or just the nikah. So he's entered into that contract, even though if it transpires afterwards, for example, that the contract's invalid. Because in this scenario, we're talking about if the mother, for example, he has consummated with the mother, and then he makes a contract with the daughter, just makes the contract, then they both cancelled out because he's he can't marry the daughter because he consummated with the mother, and he can't marry the mother because he's made a contract with the daughter. So they cancelled each other out in this scenario where he's consummated with the mother. Now, if he hasn't, then the scenario was that he remains married to the daughter. Now, because it's upon him in order for him to be haram for the daughter, he has to consummate the marriage to the mother. He hasn't consummated it. Then he makes a contract with the daughter. Then in that case, he's now married to the daughter, not the mother. No. Wallah. No.
Based on what consummation regarding, the example you said was if they make a condition that so and so marries with a condition that, but isn't without the mahar you mentioned as a emphasis.
Yeah.
But isn't mahar the wajib?
So, but they've now made it something where they've said they've made it conditional. There's going to be no mahar. So it's all within the same condition. Do you understand? So they've made a condition within the contract. Let's say, for example, they've made a condition of something else which is haram. Like the condition, we're going to get married with the condition that I'm trying to think of anything too crazy. Yeah, okay, go back to the pub. The condition that we have to do the marriage contract in the pub. Now, then it would nullify that, even though there's nothing in relation to the conditions about where the contract is done. But now, because you've entered something haram into it, it nullifies everything thereafter. So in this case, the mahar has to be paid as an obligation. Now you stipulated that you're not going to do an obligation. So now with that, you've nullified everything. Because you brought something which is haram into that contract.
Would that be not similar to the woman that puts a condition that you can't marry?
No, because it's not haram to not marry more than one. It's not haram.
But
It's not haram.
Condition though. She's bringing the condition to make it haram.
She's bringing the condition, but she's stipulated something which now has now meant that he's going to forego his right. He has the right to marry more than one, he's foregoing that right. Just now, for example, if they have discussions and they come to the agreement that he's not going to pay for all of her expenses, and he puts it in as a condition within the contract that I'm not going to pay for all of these expenses. Now, then as she agrees to that, then that's something she's foregoing something that was her right. Now, in this case, it's an obligation that you pay the mahar, and they're stipulating that there's no mahar in place. Remember as well, it's from a third party with this shirar. So someone's saying, like, I'm going to marry my son to your daughter, but on the condition that there's no mahar. Do you understand? No one could, they can't stipulate that.
But if she forsakes her, let's say, her rights, and he agrees, but if she was to take it back, it becomes wajib upon himself.
It depends. If it's a case of she's agreed to it,
Yeah.
and then she wants to take it back, generally speaking, yes. So let's say, for example, make it easier. Let's say, for example, the woman is married to the man, and then the woman's married to the man, and this woman is now the second wife. She says that I only want to see my husband one night for the week, right? And obviously her rights are that she has equal time. Thereafter, she gets married, and then she says, you know what, one night is just not enough. I want the equal amount of nights. Then it's upon him to provide that. No,
And it becomes wajib upon him.
because wajib upon him. If now though it's stipulated in the aqd that you're going to have one night, they've agreed to it, and you have one night. She agrees to it, that particular contract. Then, if now she seeks something more than that, then he can nullify the contract. No. No.
Is the marriage nullified if the condition which is haram is made at the time of marriage, or say, for example, the wife and husband make a condition which is haram that will happen after the marriage? Is it after the marriage that also falls into the marriage?
If you stipulate it at the time of making a contract, irrespective of when it occurs, because you stipulated something haram, then it invalidates that. It could invalidate the contract, or for the most part, it would do. Yeah.
So, for example, if there's a marriage and say there has to be a wedding,
Mhm.
mixed wedding,
Mm.
and the women, and if that's not happening, then there's not going to be marriage. So if they both agree, does that nullify the entire marriage?
Because if you're making the marriage based upon that, it would do. Because now, if you're saying that there's no marriage except for if you have, and they mention it all. You have to have a marriage with everyone's going to be there. There needs to be photographers. There needs to be music. There needs to be DJ. All that stuff. And they mentioned that. Then this corrupts the whole contract. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. No.
If you bring a haram condition, would they take it back, or you reject it, so they take it back? Would it still invalidate the contract, or since now they took it back, you can continue the contract?
So they bring something haram, and then you reject it. You're saying?
Say one of the parties puts in a haram contract,
Yeah.
haram
Condition, yeah.
The second party rejects it. So the first party that put it, they take it back.
They remove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So continue with the contract.
You continue, because then the condition's gone now, isn't it? So if a person puts in something haram, and then the second party says no, that's haram, so they remove it, then the contract's fine as well. It's silly. No. بارك الله فيكم. جزاكم الله خير. الله يحفظكم إخوة. بارك الله فيك. صلى الله وبارك